Hey y'all, Melissa here with you today, and I've got my husband, the coach, with me modeling today's project. I'm going to show you how to take a hoodie pattern and instead do this collared half zip version. So I've got a couple of options for the pattern and they're both linked below. One is the one size free hoodie pattern and the other one is available for purchase and it is multiple sizes. So choose your option, grab your pattern, and then meet me back at the camera and I will show you how to do this. Let's look at how to modify the pattern. Working with the front piece here, the first thing I'm going to do is tape some paper under so that I can work on the neckline and the center front. Now, if you are using the free hoodie pattern, it's going to look different than the one I'm using, which is the cornrow sweatshirt, because the sweatshirt has a marking on it for a crew neckline. So if you're using that one size free hoodie pattern, you're going to want to go an inch up from the neckline and draw in that crew neckline because we're going to be working from that right now. The next modification, I've gone ahead and I've already drawn on the shoulder seam allowance here. I'm going to need to know where that is. So I'm going to be adding a 1/2 inch because the neckband would be 1 inch wide, but it starts a 1/2 inch down because of seam allowances. So I'm just going to be adding a 1/2 inch all the way along this crew neckline. And you actually want this collar to be sitting as close to your neck as the neckband would. So I have to draw where the neckband would end. And you could use a curved ruler or a French curve to draw this in. I'm just going to freehand it here. And make sure I finish marking off that shoulder seam there. Now I'm going to take my zipper and I want to mark 2 inches down from this zipper stop on my zipper. And I want to make sure that mark extends across the zipper so I can see it clearly. So what I'm going to do is I want this mark to align with the seam allowance where I'm going to be sewing the collar to the neckline. The seam allowance is actually going to be right at the crew neckline because that is 1/2 inch down from the cut line that we drew in. So I'm going to align that right there with my mark, and then I want to mark down here at the bottom zipper stop. Right below it, I want to put a mark on the center front of my pattern. And I want to extend that line across. And this is going to be the upper portion of my shirt. And then we've got the lower portion here. For the lower portion, I need to add a seam allowance going this direction. So the lower portion would be the bottom portion of my pattern and then cut off here. The upper portion, I need to add a seam allowance going this way. So this is where I would cut the upper piece of the pattern. Because I'm adding that zipper in center front, I also need to add a seam allowance. So let me cut this out, and then this is the upper portion of my pattern. Okay, so I'm going to be cutting 2 of these out of the blue fabric for my hoodie. I still need to draft a couple more pieces and make a couple more alterations though. So the next thing I need to do actually has to do with the back pattern piece. And I need to make that same alteration to the neckline because I need the shoulders to match and because I need the collar to sit closer on the back neckline like the neckband would. So I'm going to be coming in a 1/2 inch. And I do also want to mark this shoulder seam for the back piece. So there we go. Now, I need to draft zipper guards for inside this front piece. And let me label this since I cut the label off. So I want them to be the same height as this, which is, in my case, 8 inches. I want it to be 8 inches by 1.5 inches wide, and I'm going to cut 2 rectangles those dimensions. And then I want to be able to line up my seam allowances on my front and back pieces and measure along the crew neckline here. And I'm going to be drafting, the collar is going to be a rectangle that is going to be the same as this crew neckline is in length, and it's going to be 3 inches tall, and it'll be a rectangle. So I need to draft and cut out that piece as well. So we're going to take the back of this sweatshirt, put everything else aside, and we're going to take the 2 upper front pieces. We're going to sew those shoulder seams just right across there. As a reminder, I am using a stretch stitch to sew these shoulder seams. The next step, once you have those shoulder seams sewn, is going to be to pin on one of the collar pieces. So we want to mark the center back, and then we are going to match the collar piece center to that, and we're putting them right sides together. And then you want to match the other end of the collar to the front neckline and pin all the way in between. And remember, you may have some wrinkles around those curves because you're matching the seam line, not the raw edge. So as long as the wrinkles aren't on your seam line, you're good. Then you want to take this over to your sewing machine and stitch that collar piece on. Still using a stretch stitch. And here is what that looks like when it's done. Now we're going to turn it around to be ready to sew the zipper on. What I need to do is I need to press these seam allowances up towards the collar, and then I need to take the zipper and I want to match the line on the zipper with that seam line, and I want to put them right sides together here. And then I'm going to baste this side of the zipper in place. Now I've changed to a zipper foot on my machine and a basting stitch. And up here at the beginning of the zipper, I'm going to move the pull out of the way so that I can match the zipper tape to the edge and not get bumped by the pull. I'm just going to baste right along the edge. Move this pull back out of the way and continue basting this in place. So as you can see, that line matches up to the seam line in the collar. And then I want to repeat this on the other side of the shirt. So I'm going to be matching that collar seam line to the mark with the seam allowances pressed up, and I'll pin that all in place. Once you have that all basted in place, check and make sure that your zipper is lining up, your marks are lining up. If this is uneven, you only basted, so you can take those basting stitches out and you can fix it. Now we need to sew on the zipper guards. So to do that, I'm going to go back to one side of the zipper that I stitched, and I want to take the guard, and it is going to be wrong side up, and it is only going to go on this front piece. It's not going to go up in the collar here. So we'll align the bottoms of this, and then I need to make sure that I am only sewing like on this side of the zipper. The zipper area on this sweatshirt is not going to stretch because the zipper doesn't stretch, so it's okay to use a straight stitch for this portion. I'm also going to be, instead of right on the edge of the zipper, I'm going to be sewing with the normal zipper seam allowance. So as you can see on my machine, I've moved my needle to the other side of my zipper foot. So I'm sewing through all three layers here, the guard, the zipper, and the shirt front, with a normal straight stitch. And you can stop stitching a 1/2 inch from the end and back stitch. And then you'll see what we've got here is we can now fold this over, and it's going to protect your skin from that edge of the zipper tape. I'm going to repeat that with the other side here. So again, I'm placing the guard wrong side up against that zipper tape. And this time, since I'm starting at the top of the zipper, I'm going to start 1/2 inch down and start by back stitching. Once you have both of those guards sewn on, here's what it looks like. On the inside, they open up and they'll protect your skin from that zipper tape. Now we need to finish up the rest of the collar here. So I'm going to unzip the zipper, and I'm going to fold that zipper tape back so that I am working just with that edge. And I'm going to take the other collar, I'm going to pin that into place. Just like earlier, I'm only going to sew to where this seam is. I'm not going to sew beyond it. So I'm going to poke my pin right through, and that's where I will stop stitching. And we'll match the collar all the way around and matching the top edge. And over here, flip the zipper back. And make sure to mark where I want to stop stitching. Okay, y'all, I'm using a straight stitch here because I'm next to the zipper, and make sure that you can feel those zipper teeth, or possibly even switch back to a zipper foot to stitch this part. When you turn here, you also want to make sure, in fact, you may even want to hand crank your machine to make sure that you don't hit that metal stop on the zipper that is up in this area. And then switch back to a stretch stitch for the top edge of the collar. As you get close to the zipper again, remember the same thing, that there might be that metal stop there that you need to avoid. So I'm going to switch back to a straight stitch, and I'm going to hand crank this area, which is a good thing because I can feel that stop right there. All right, y'all, once we have that stitched up, we can turn the collar right side out. kind of use the zipper to pull out the corner there. You may want to press all along this top collar edge. And then on the inside here, you've got to pin some things down for top stitching. So I want this guard to get folded in, and then I want the collar to be tucked in above that, just like this. And I want that folded edge of the collar to go just beyond this seam. All right, y'all, here's what this looks like once it is all pinned in place. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to top stitch using a straight stitch all up this line. And then starting here, I'm gonna switch to a stretch stitch and top stitch all along the top of the collar till I get to here. I'll go back to the straight stitch and down this way. All right, y'all, here is what it looks like once that top stitching is finished. You can see I used a straight stitch up the side of the zipper and then turned here, and this is a lightning bolt zigzag stitch here around the collar, and then I switched back to a straight stitch down the side of the zipper again. So all I have left to finish this part off is to stitch in the ditch here, and I am going to use my lightning bolt stretch stitch for this. You can also use a narrow zigzag stitch. And because I know somebody is going to ask, I'm not going to tell you the exact stitch to use. It's going to depend on a combination of your machine, the stitches it has, and the fabric you're using. So if you're really concerned about exactly how wide to make your zigzag and how long, I'd suggest taking some scraps of the fabric you're using and experimenting to see what works best with your combination of those variables. All right, here's what this looks like now on the inside. I think it's easier to see on the back where it contrasts here. That folded edge is covering up any of those seam allowances inside. I need to cut off these little threads, and then that portion is finished. I'm going to zip this back up. And then take the bottom half of this, and I'm going to put that right sides together with the lower half of the shirt, making sure that we're matching the correct edge. We've got that arm side there. And I'm going to stitch right across that seam. I'm going to do this with the zipper side up to make sure that my stitching line goes just barely below that metal stop at the bottom of the zipper. And I am still using the stretch stitch on my machine. Alright, y'all, here is what that looks like. You can see the seam stops right below the zipper stop there. And if desired, you can go back and press this seam open or press it to one side or the other. And you can top stitch that down if you'd like. In fact, I believe I am going to press it down and top stitch with the seam allowances all pointing down. And then once you get to this point, the rest of the sweatshirt construction is just the same as the regular sweatshirt. You put in the sleeves, you put on the cuffs, you put on the hemband, and you're done. If you'd like more sweatshirt hacks, make sure to check out this playlist that I've got here because there are a ton of sweatshirt hacks in that list.